Now with the second part of our session. Afterwards there will be a discussion of all the three papers that were presented, and then later there will be drinks for everybody so that we can meet each other and talk over more. So now I will present Goran Yanev, who is presenting a paper on building history Skopje 2014. Goran, the topic is a continuation in some ways of what we have been discussing all over this day, and very current one. Goran Yanev is an anthropologist. He is teaching at the University of St. Cyril and Methodius of Skopje. He had studied ethnology and sociology at the same university. He completed his PhD in social anthropology at the Institute for Social and Cultural Anthropology at the University of Oxford. His dissertation was on the informal organizations of the two communities of Republic of Macedonia, Macedonians and Albanians. He has taught Macedonian studies at the School of Slavonic and East European Studies of the University of College, London. Goran was a postdoctoral research fellow in Max Planck Institute for the Study of Religious and Ethnic Diversity in Göttingen, Germany. And his research interests are in the fields of political and urban anthropology, multiculturalism, and the politics of ethnic diversity. He's currently studying the urban transformations in the city of Skopje. So, hello.
Thank you. This research that I'm going to present is actually a result of my work as a I went there to start analyzing interethnic relations in Macedonia, and then I stumbled upon, as usual, in explaining the dynamics, interethnic dynamics in Macedonia. And when this government at the beginning silently and discreetly started announcing parts of the project that they later called Skopje 2014, I decided that it's a great opportunity for me to use this materialization of nationalist politics in Macedonia, and which would allow me to more easier present to the foreign audiences and to interested colleagues the situation in my country. So I focused on Skopje 2014, and this presentation will be mostly visual. You'll see a lot of slides because it's difficult to comprehend otherwise the dimensions of success of the successfully implemented project. Dimitris was speaking about the failed project of a junta, of a regime that had all control in their hands, and our government is democratically elected and still has the same freedom and same free hand without any consequences in implementing this project, that is avoiding any possible procedure for implementing any such intervention. And interventions are massive, and you'll be able to see. But before before I continue, let me just introduce you to the field. Here you can see Skopje is on more or less equal distance between Thessaloniki down south, Sofia on the east, Tirana on the west, and much more closer to Pristina. This is the outlook of city of Skopje today from some current Google Maps or Bing Maps. I'm not sure what it is there. I tried to connect few so you have an idea. The center where the pin stands there is the central part of what I will speak about Skopje. It's a story about how Skopje has been transforming. And on this slide, which is not completely clear, but the darkest area, there shows the oldest layers of the the city as it was growing in different periods of history. This is the current outlay, maybe a bit more right now. So there, you cannot see there anything. But however, so I'll come to another slide that presents this much better. This is the central part, where the most of the monuments and the reconstruction is happening. Here, this is the main square. In the middle, of course, is Alexander the Great. You'll see him later in his all bronze glory and marble. And this is the old bazaar of city of Skopje. So on this hill is the fortress of in Skopje, actually where the city started growing. And here are some historical maps of the city before today's look. Some of them are not that good in terms of contrast and whatever, but you can have some ideas about how the city was going. This is in 48, so practically this was the city in 48 after the war, and this was the planned reconstruction. And in 64, it already grew to those dimensions. Here is another map of Skopje today. Again, in the middle, you find the central part. You see, I hope, in all these slides, you can use the river as a guiding point. So this is much better representation of what was happening in Skopje. So up there you have before the beginning of the 20th century how Skopje looked. This is the river. Then this is in 1914, just after the Balkan Wars, when the Serbs came to possess the territory of Northern Macedonia. And this is the map of Skopje in 29, how you can see how it was developing southward of the river and expanding a little bit, still in radial concentric circles. And this is the position in 1948. You have the city here and the planned linear construction and development of the city, which is restricted by mountains on this side and on this side, south and northern side. So let us go back to the Ottoman time. Let's try to have a little feel of Skopje back then. You can see on this slide the square, that is main square now, that is a central part of these reconstructions. And you can see here the Burmali Mosque. This is the place, later you'll see some other buildings there, and it's now part of debates how Skopje is supposed to be, if we are going to reconstruct it, that it's supposed, because it was there before the Serbs teared it down. So it's again entering into this inter-ethnic politics and games. And here it's already most Cara Dušana, already in the Serbian time, south of this part of the town entrance, and all this part in the south was called Karşıyaka, which in Turkish means on the other side, Karshi. So it was never the part of the town, but as you can see, this side of the river becomes central later on, both for Serbs and for Macedonian planners and builders as of recently. So this is postcards from the time, and it's not very visible, but mind the heads. Look at the heads. You can find every different possible way of heads, and that's my starting point in my thesis, that practically Skopje was never monocultural, never mononational. It was always a place of meeting of different cultures and people of different walks of life. But of course, when the Serbs came as a part, we incorporated this part of the region region as a part of Serbia, of Kingdom of Yugoslavia. They Serbianized Macedonians. Of course, they don't exist. They are Serbs, and you can see that immediately in the 20s they built a theater. It was called People's Theater of King Petar Karađorđe, and this object actually, which was destroyed by the earthquake in 1963, was the one that gave an idea to the current builders that Skopje had some other history apart from the socialist past, and there was this initiative to start rebuilding this theater, and then from then on you'll see where it led us. So already in the 30s, Skopje was modernized. You see the fountain in the square, pavement was put there, you see buildings here, there is a building, the mosque is no longer there, another building there. This is National Bank, you'll see them later on the pictures. This is the officer's house, and these two monuments of the Peter and Aleksandar Karađorđević were erected. So we already had symbolic interventions in the town that was supposed to break away from the Ottoman past and to bring it to the European sphere. In 50s, not much has been changed. This space is clear. This was used as a street for the cars and whatever kind of vehicles that were used. This is this officer's house. This is the People's Bank. In the officer's house, it's a big hall practically for balls and stuff like that. So this bourgeois nostalgia is evoked when we speak about the officer's house. It's still not reconstructed. This is in 60s, Skopje in 60s. You can see the streets are shown, the buses are passing and all that. You see new modern buildings erected. This is built in 30s by the Serbs as well, but we missed the National Bank and Officer's House. Those buildings disappeared with the earthquake and were part of were evoked of a resilient Skopje that will be reborn and rebuilt after the earthquake. And it's interesting that the stamp over there says meetings of solidarity in Skopje, because Skopje was then city of solidarity, the first city first geographical point on this planet where you have, in the middle of the Cold War, American and Russian soldiers cooperating in the clearing efforts after the earthquake. So this rebirth of the city as a modern city of solidarity is again represented in these pictures. You see it's evoking these nostalgic points. Now they are missing, but city has to grow. And how the city is supposed to grow, in which direction, how it should develop, it's part of this story that I will try to tell you. So how we get from there to this, you see high-rises in the landscape. How we got to those high-rises, how we got from 1912, how Skopje looked. You see this is the only part on this side of the city today. How we got to this, how we came from there to here, to this modern constructions and buildings and architecture in brutalist style, or how we came to here. This is something very recent. It's just still in construction. Some of those buildings, this is built already. New monuments on the square, and so we came there through the work of international competition. United Nations organized a competition for rebuilding of Skopje. Kenzo Tange, the famous brutalist and, not brutalist, member of the Metamorphosis movement in architecture, of course prone to the modernist brutalist expression, suggested the new urban master plan for Skopje. This is the initial drawing of Kenzo Tange, how Skopje should look. This is how those drawings were slowly turned into a plan for the city, and you can see how he kept the old bazaar. He envisaged the opening to the river with two big squares that are twinning squares on both sides. This is the new complex. This is the railway station that will bring people to the city. A lot of underways and overways. I'll show you some of the models that were built for Skopje in Tokyo. And this is how Skopje was supposed to look like. This is the entrance to the city. Here is the old city bridge. This is the city square we are speaking about now. And here is the old bazaar. So it was, bazaar was kept and incorporated in the new city. And the new city was supposed to reflect this original structure. So you see here still standing, and the buildings and everything developing around it. And this is a closer look to that. This is the old bazaar and old nucleus of the city. And this is how this vision looked like of Skopje. The question is, what happened with this vision, with this ultra-modern city? Of course, the partial realization of these ideas left Skopje as a city of fragments, Skopje city of layers, Skopje city of unfinished project. And then this government, which is riding the wing of nationalism and populism, which is winning every election in a row, in the last 7 elections in a row on every level, presidential, local, governmental, ordinary, extraordinary, parliamentary elections, with a huge majority voting them in power. Of course, they know the governing techniques very well and scheming techniques very well. But however, undisputedly, they are the legitimate rulers of Macedonia right now. And this is how they see Skopje. This is how they envisage Skopje. These are Baroque facades just put on top of the existing modernist facades. It's just facade. The building is standing there below. The triumphal arch, of course, at the entrance of. So what happened with this Skopje? How we came to why we don't have the modernist Skopje, we don't have the Ottoman Skopje. This is a look from the fortress. You see the minarets behind there. We came to this. We arrived here. We arrived to this point. So I call this the facadist architecture. Its main aim is to erase the past. Its main aim is to cover, through facades, to cover what was there before, whatever socialist, modernist, as they call it, identityless, without identity architecture, and they try to bring back identity to the built environment in Skopje, and they try to bring back the national identity to the city of Skopje. And following these ideas, my question was, okay, maybe they have legitimate right to try to do that, but what is happening with the others in the country? Macedonia is only 60% Macedonians as a population. Then you have around 25 Albanians. Then you have the rest. You have over 30 ethnic groups living in this country, speaking different languages and belonging to different confessions, different religions. So how will they feel when they will pass beneath these gigantic sculptures of 30-meter high? This is 30 meter at the top. Yeah, this is like something like 17, and this is like 15. So it's all in total like 30 meters. So instead of the Serbian kings, we have Goce Delchev and Dame Gruev. We have Macedonian revolutionaries. You see now the buildings being already built there. The fortress is just behind. The old Skopje you can practically not see. This is how they do it. Macedonian revolutionaries are fighting against the Turks. Yeah, shared with Bulgarians. So this is why I'm calling this facadist architecture. This is the existing building, and this is the new building. This is you can see it here frontally a bit. This in the corner. It's archaeological museum, state archive, and Macedonian Academy of Sciences should be moved. Not Macedonian Science. Constitutional Court. 3 institutions. So the distance between this building and this building is less than 2 meters. And I think it's against any construction regulation in any country on this planet. Also, from here onwards, this building is inside the forbidden zone for building because it's entering the main basin of the river Vardar that knows to overflow. And big millions were spent to prevent this overflowing of the river, occasional overflowing of the river, but they disregarded these prohibitions because they wanted the building there. They need those facades. So this is the look from one high point. So you see the Skopje that they are hiding behind. You see they're hiding all these minarets that are lurking, and they're hiding the other side of the river Vardar that is becoming a natural border in the minds of ethno-nationalists behind this project. This is the Skopje they want us to forget. This is the Mustafa Pasha Jamia. You see the yellow dome. It's because there was a reconstruction. The Turkish government provided some money for reconstruction of the mosque on the other side. So behind what we see, behind these facades. This is the clock tower, also forgotten moment in Skopje, and this is one of the oldest mosques in the Balkans, hiding there. And this is the Skopje that we don't want to remember, and this Skopje that we don't want to remember. We don't like it, and the government don't like it. So here is the old theater reconstruction, beginning of the old theater reconstruction. Here is the Museum of Macedonian Struggle being constructed. So those are those facades, this wall of facades that is hiding the other Skopje. This facade architecture I call frontier architecture. I'm borrowing here from Wendy Pulan when she speaks about Jerusalem, about frontier archaeology in Jerusalem. So this is an exercise in dividing a city, I would say so. I mean, I don't know if it's their ultimate wish, but it's where this project leads them. And as an example of this frontier archaeology and frontier architecture is the reconstructed fortress. This layer was not there, it was only one that you cannot see here. This is completely new wall, and you can see the contours, metal frame, steel frame, of something that you can see looks like a church. And it provoked a lot of reactions. People led by the mayor of municipality of Chair, municipality on the other side on the river, came with his supporters and with the machines to cut down this construction, and police was standing and looking. And then the next weekend we had this symbolic violence was turned into a real violence when some Macedonian radical nationalists summoned Macedonians to defend the construction of the building, and then the conflict. The mayor again dispatched his cronies. Actually, it was a battle between the two fan groups, one of Vardar committee of a local Macedonian football club, and the other of Šverceri, who are supporting Albanian football club. So they clashed, and there was a fight and blood. Luckily, nobody was hurt. So the other side is not that innocent. So it's not only Macedonians violating the space. Albanians constructed and erased this monument of Skanderbeg, the national hero of Albanian history, who is standing there on guard at the edge of the old bazaar. You can see him always with a fresh flag in his arm after it's teared down. Macedonians, of course, they put flags everywhere. everywhere possible. And Skenderbeg is put there to sit on guard, as I see him, in this active and ongoing symbolic war. And it's remind us, I mean, in my presentation, when I was hearing the other presenters today, I was like, okay, I can pick up for all these guys the concepts and analytical tools they were using, and I can implement everything to Skopje 2014, to my project. We can speak about this urban conflict in symbolic conflict going on in Mostar and Urbi side of the city as well. This is Urbi side as well, if I may be free. So you see here Skenderbeg standing and with his hand like this, pointing towards this tiny little cross on this picture, but it's a cross that is 77 meters high. It was erected therefore marking the millennium of 2000 years of Christianity. So this is a picture from Skopska Crna Gora. This is on Vodno. This is on Vodno. Yeah, I took this picture from Skopska Crna Gora. You see the Skopje down there, the lights, and you see the cross lighting in the night. To see all the Aegean islands, to see the cross. The same ideas. And the cross is not put in any, there is no theological defense for the orientation of the cross. It's just geographical opportunism. Here is the cross, how it looks from the close. They build the how you call this elevator? Yeah. No, the cable car to the cross, so you can go there for a picnic, and it's free for the retired persons and young kids. And this is a piece of architecture. This is the Museum of Mother Teresa. This is the piece of architecture to show you the quality of architects behind this. I only chose one slide to show you for this because otherwise you got sick. On the other side is a glass and marble and everything. This is the monument of museum house of Mother Teresa in Skopje, of course with the national flag there. This is the new architecture, the Triumphal Arch. This is on the occasion of you can see people down there, the crowds, and after the military parade, the Prime Minister walked through this gate on the occasion of 20th anniversary of Macedonian independence. This is how they want Skopje to look, and the purpose of this charade, lights come, like, I don't know, these are the monuments you can see there. Here is Alexander the Great, here is the cross. This is the whole show is going on every evening. The colors are changing, red, blue, green, whatever. There are lions there spitting water from their mouths, and pompous music is playing in the background. People in the buildings surrounding the buildings are complaining that they cannot sleep at night, so they cut the music at 12. But I don't know what they do till 12 o'clock in the evening every day in the summer because they need some fresh air. So this is how they imagine Skopje. This is this museum of Macedonian struggle and the victims of communism, two parts in one museum. And this is as they are popularly called, the sheet sprinklers, because the River Vardar here is an open sewage channel. River Vardar has no collectors, so the Skopje sewage goes directly to the river, and they install these sprinklers because it's attractive, and they put lights. And people are afraid to cross the street. This is the bridge. People are afraid to cross the bridge because they can catch some virus or whatever. But then they explain to everybody that the water is supplied. It's clean water is supplied for the sprinkling. So they are wasting even more resources that are given to us by nature for their project. But it should be entertaining. So what are the reactions to all this? You might ask yourself, and I expect that you are asking that. So the answer has been this. The answer has been revitalization of that old bazaar. Sudden revitalization of the old bazaar. I can tell you many stories about the old bazaar. I spent 5 years doing my studies in the early 90s, late 80s in the old bazaar. My mother was having a ceramic gallery in the bazaar and for 5 years, and I was spending my days there, and the old bazaar was very vibrant and lively. But then in 1992 there was the first ethnic clashes in Macedonia, ethnic riots in Macedonia, in the big bazaar nearby this old bazaar, and this old bazaar became heavily policed and controlled zone after the clashes, after those riots, and a number of people were killed. And for me that's the symbolic, not symbolic, it's a real actual beginning of the symbolic division of the city. So the area was pronounced unsafe, unsecure, Albanized. Albanians are of course mafiosi, they smuggle drugs, goods, they launder money, they exchange money on the black market, and the bazaar became known, notorious for that. And it was like that, and nobody did anything in all these years. There were some initiatives here and there to revitalize the old bazaar, but it was only a lip service, paying lip service to this Skopje heritage. And all of a sudden, through private initiative, opening one little wine shop, opening one another cafe just below these stairs. One or two there behind this corner is this wine shop, wine bar, and next to it is this another bar for young people. It changed the whole dynamics of the old bazaar. So all of a sudden people got an interest to go to the old bazaar, and they started walking and moving there. And Saturday, Sunday afternoons, they have their lunch with their kids there. They're mushrooming restaurants and cafes being open there. It's extremely pleasant. As you walk, like if you walk 20 meters, you'll hear blues music coming from some rakia bar, and then next to it there is a Turkish tea shop which is playing some chalgia in the evening, and then above it in the beer house there is some rock and roll band or whatever, and then on the other corner there is some jazz band performing. So in the summer it's extremely vibrant, it's extremely pleasant. You can say that there is this kind of bohemian bourgeois bobo gentrification of the old bazaar. But however, even if it's consumer driven, even if it's driven by the need of Skopje citizens to go and revisit this place, the question is remaining that is looming over this thing, whole thing is, why now? Why the bazaar is revitalized right now? Why do we have people now flocking over the stone bridge which was in reconstruction for 15 years, and now it's finally done, and people walk over this and cross over these barriers, these symbolic frontiers between the communities. And I'm not saying that you walk to the bazaar. This is a tea house, and it's frequented mostly by Albanians and Turks. And you can see now only males and some female there. But these days, more and more girls would come and play their domino and whatever during the day. And it's okay, you can say, so they don't mix. But in Macedonia, we never, the multicultural model in Macedonia that is forgotten and it's not analyzed and it's not spoken about because of the nationalist narratives in the social sciences. It's model of coexistence. So you don't have this conviviality and coexistence in terms of hugging each other and mixed marriages and this kind of stories, but you have a multicultural model based on, I can speak about it later, based on respect of each other's differences. I don't step and I don't spit on your ground, and I expect the same wise on the other hand. I did a lot, I mean, there is not much time, like a few seconds till the limit of my time of the presentation. I did a lot of research with the old shopkeepers. I did even a survey of in the old bazaar, and their discourse and narrative is about we don't care about the other, we welcome and embrace everybody, everybody is my friend, all my customers are mixed, I don't see my customers as mixed, even if they lie, it's a nice lie, and it's interesting ideological window to the ideological orientation of these people, that they want to live together, they don't have problem with each other, but their politicians, they have problem with each other, I guess, or actually not, they live in very nice symbiosis. They have divided Macedonia territorially on the west part, which is Albanized, the rest is Macedonian nationalized, they wave flags, they mark territories with flags, with monuments, with the names of streets, names of schools, everything. So that's why I'm saying this is a very successful experiment in dividing a city. I hope they will fail at the end. It's still early. I expect more nationalism, I expect more radical policies, I expect more harsh authoritarian decisions and policy making, because that will probably wake up Macedonian civil sector to react and Macedonian citizens to react. But for the moment, we have to, and I'm going to conclude, for the moment we can only have a faith in these ephemeral movements, trails, and tracks created by movement of people. And just to conclude, I'm basing my whole assumption is based on the power of locality. Locality understood as a historical project, as Padurai calls it, and as a locality as a problematic moment for the homogenizing horizontal forces of nationalist territorialization. So locality provides a vertical layering of history, and I believe that Old Bazaar is one such locality that provides layers upon layers of history and shared past. And as I see it, we can speak about Spiritus Loci, or we can speak about Steve Pyle's haunted places. It's haunted by good memories and a good understanding of each other. And I remain hopeful that things will not turn according to the vision of the power holders right now. Thank you.
I want to thank Goran very much about this presentation. I know how difficult it is to speak about a project that is ongoing, and it's so controversial, and it is very courageous of him. Of course, as I live myself for 3 years in Skopje, I have to say that it is of a surprise to the population as a whole how rapidly these things are built. This is only a very small part of what is built. There are hundreds of monuments. Every day they are putting new ones. And there are monuments and buildings. And so the city is transformed in such a rapid way that people are in a shock. And according to the poll, 75% of the population is against this project. And nevertheless, the government continues, because this is also, of course, as you can imagine, this involves a lot of money for the tenders and for the buildings of all of that. And okay, we can talk more if anybody is more interested, but what I want to say is that people right now live this as a shock to their memory and to the identity of the city. And of course, what they all say is that, I mean, I have many friends who say, I don't want to pass from the center anymore, I don't want to see all that, okay, etc. But they're all saying that we feel like that, but like, you know, the second generation, they will only see this city. This will be their identity of a city. And anyway, it's a very interesting question. I think that this is nationalism by the book in a speed-up process. And I welcome your questions, and we can start the discussion. Of course, to all of the participants. Nobody dares to start. Yes, please, Chavdar.
Actually, I have a question to Dimitris. I really find fascinating this project about the Cathedral of Athens, and how this project actually is, in a way, it is trans-contextual, because we find it in different periods of the contemporary history of Greece, launched by different political actors, etc. From this point of view, it would be really interesting. It's not really a question, but rather a suggestion, or yeah, it's a question also. If you intend to compare it to some clearly similar cases in more or less neighboring states, like, for instance, Saint Sava's Cathedral in Belgrade, or the Cathedral of the Salvation of the People in Bucharest, which is under construction. Saint Sava is already built. These are, well, Saint Sava is obviously the success story, and we're going to see how the Bucharest mega Orthodox Cathedral will finish and will look like one day. So obviously there are very similar cases in the region.
I mean, sorry, maybe we can have more questions, or if anybody wants to ask Dimitris, or... Okay, go on.
One question about the Doxiadis urbanization project, because I was very intrigued by what you said. It began with a kind of friendship, if I understood, with Hieronymus Koutsonis in '65. So before the junta.
Yes.
So before the junta, they planned together a cathedral on Lycabettus.
Yes.
And so they planned, if I understood, they planned an avenue from Syntagma Square through the Lycabettus.
That was later. That was
later. So in the beginning it was to cover the Lycabettus with a dome.
Yes.
And then they would make an avenue, an underground avenue.
Yeah. Well,
through the Lycabettus to the Tukovunia.
Yes.
So a complete radical change of the capital.
Yes.
So that would be, that was Doxiadis' concern, because he wanted to change the capital. He didn't like the plan. So maybe that was what he thought of. That was the way Doxiadis would change. It would give him the opportunity to change the capital. He didn't like the way it was done in the 19th century. He didn't like the parallel avenues from Syntagma to Omonia. He wanted a less concentric center. He preferred a more monumental, but less and more space. And he wanted a megapolis, as he called them. And he thought of a city extending from Athens to Chalkida. So he wanted a more space, more open in the center of the city. So that would give him the opportunity to replan the center of the city.
Let me ask you, what do you prefer? You prefer to answer right now?
It's up to you.
It's up to you.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Or maybe we can have... Okay, so let me comment, because maybe you don't know both, that Doxiadis made the plan of Skopje, urban plan of Skopje after the earthquake.
Yes.
And it is a fabulous plan. And of course he had this kind of urban planning architecture that was very partly realized. actually. I don't know if it's something.
Let me first answer your comments last question. Yes, I agree with you. There's an obvious comparative parameter, and I could add to what you've just said, and it makes sense. It is something that I would like to explore, even though I'm not quite sure whether this is some, even in the sense of like background information. I don't know if I'm going to engage in turn this project into something like placing that emphasis on its comparative parameters. But there's also the Church of the Divine Providence in Poland, which I think the case is rather similar. So yes, there are many similarities that I think call for a consideration. Now, when it comes to your question, Professor Birikos, about Doxiadis. Now, initially, Doxiadis was approached, as I said, by Hieronymus Kotsonis, and that was in 1965. And this is all information that I share with you, and it stems from my study of the archive. And at that time, in 1965, the archive shows that Doxiadis is not particularly knowledgeable of the Tamatu ethnos, but he likes the idea of being given the chance to create a new cathedral for the metropolis. And so again, the idea is to, at that time, is for that cathedral to be built on top of Lycabettus Hill, and for him that was, as I said, a perfect opportunity to and also engage in landscape, what he considered landscape restoration. As time goes by, Doxiadis keeps on thinking and further developing his ideas about the Tamatu ethnos, and eventually so does the junta. Initially they think of a single church, but as time goes by, they start thinking of creating a new modernist acropolis for Hellenism. So by shifting locations and moving the designated site to Turcovunia, they think that yes, the church of the Savior should dominate the landscape, but it should be a new acropolis, a new modernist acropolis, part of a complex of buildings that would create a new Δημόσιο-σήμα. It will be part of a national park. Doxiadis had imagined a museum, the Museum of the Hellenes, to which every generation would be contributing something. So it becomes something larger. What was unfortunate for Doxiadis was that even though he was very much willing to also act as an urban planner, and at the time he was an internationally recognized figure, more so abroad than in Greece, and I know that this was something that hurt him a lot. It was the regime had entrusted Professor Aravandinos from the National Technical School and his team and his laboratory to come up with a larger urban study, as part of which and part of which will be the Tama. So he wasn't given the chance to participate in that kind of endeavor, even though, but of course I should clarify that he never participated in the architectural competitions that the regime had launched. He was very closely following what was happening and the kind of work that other architects were submitting, but he never participated. He had, of course, he continued working on the Tama and thinking in terms eventually of a new modernist acropolis. But when it comes to that particular intervention that Patakos describes, even though it might well be that he had in mind Doxiadis, I suspect that what the archive shows was that the junta was already working closely with Aravandinos, and he was more or less in charge of rethinking this kind of massive scale interventions into the metropolitan to the body.
Thank you, and let's go on with other questions about this. Yeah.
Okay. So it's always well, then I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but did the junta explicitly refer to the decision of the National Assembly in 1829, so that to link itself to that historical heritage?
Absolutely, but without making any other mention of anything that had happened in between, because I think the idea was to establish this ideological and historical direct link to the revolution of 1821, and we should keep in mind that it was described as a ethnosotirios epanastasi, as a revolution, also because they wanted to recall this kind of that particular memory.
They represented themselves as a kind of both continuity and discontinuity. I mean, continuity directly from the Greek War of Independence, but also discontinuity.
In terms of aesthetics, you mean? In terms of aesthetics, or
no.
What kind of discontinuity?
I'm talking about the historical past. They are referring to which historical past is theirs.
Yes, absolutely. We're here dealing with a very selective reading of
yes.
history, which places emphasis on the revolution of 1821 and disregards other developments concerning the nation's vow. There's everything that happened in between, more or less.
And they were thinking only about the church, not anything else, not any other kind of monument. I mean, this kind of this acropolis, new acropolis they would like to, Parthenon or whatever they wanted to construct, it was always conceived in religious terms, or not? Were there any other plans where also antiquity was integrated, or did they exclusively refer to the religious environment?
Well, I think that the regime, as time went by, would keep on reflecting on this particular project and add ideas and buildings, and from the original suggestion on the part of the church to fulfill the vow by constructing a new cathedral, eventually by 1973, when the third architectural competition was launched, they had moved. They were already imagining something greater, in which and the Church of the Savior would be part of it, but they were imagining, as I said, the construction of a new Dimosiosima. So you see there the direct analogies with the classical past, which again will be part of a larger park. It was a new modernist acropolis that they had in mind, and with several belvedere located in different parts of Tulukovunia, a new museum. So it was, again, it was a complex, yes.
May I ask one question? You contested in your presentation a little bit the idea that only a dictatorship would have such a plan. At the same time, I mean, of course, you informed that many other political leaders or systems before had thought of this. However, don't you find a difference, I mean, of the different periods ideas about this? I mean, the idea is that, okay, let's build a church that would honor, the people who fell and the fact that God helped the Greeks or whatever. So, however, the way that this would going to be implemented and the project itself, I guess it would have totally different outlook depending on the time, on the period, on the ideas, and on the political system. Regarding the literature we have available, we know that in general, autocratic regimes tend to be more megalomaniac. And tend to impose their, their ideological identity on space and regarding urban plans, etc. I don't know whether this is true or not, or in this case it is something that can be confirmed, but what is your conclusion?
I think we should problematize this assumption. What I said was that this particular periodization that is most prominent in terms of public history, the obvious idea that the conception that the dictatorship starts on April 21st, 1967, and abruptly ends in 74, makes it very, very hard to trace continuities and discontinuities on the one hand, and at the same time establishes this a connection which I consider essentialist in nature between aesthetics and ideology. I think that if we look, if kitsch is the conceptual framework that we would like to follow or impose on different material, we can discover kitsch everywhere. For instance, let's think of what takes place every year in Messolongi, where you have hundreds of people dressed up in kilts reenacting the fall of Messolongi. Why is that less kitsch? Or why the idea of organizing the best Olympic Games in the world's modern history by spending millions of euros at the time to build structures that in that case should not be discussed in terms of megalomania or politics. So of course I see that and there is an art literature that discusses, for instance, Mussolini's endorsement of futurism. But at the same time, of course we should not overlook this body of literature, but at the same time we should problematize what this kind of approach does, and to what extent these approaches might obscure our academic visibilities and prevent us from rethinking, reapproaching, revisiting particular moments in history. That's all I'm saying.
Please. Just a very elementary question. The word Tama, this project, do we know with what does it connect? What's the history behind the use of the word?
Yeah.
Because it's a different thing, a decision, a revolutionary one, in the assembly of a memorial with the church. And another thing is the town, which I don't know whether it translates correctly with power.
Yeah, well, you're right, and there could have been other ways of, I could have described the Church of the Savior in terms of votos, ex votos, votive offerings, but here I feel that the term Tama captures both a historical reality that goes back to the 19th century, which is what you've just mentioned, but also it embodies religious cosmologies and understandings of it's a term that refers to acting out a collective vow, which I think that translates well to what subsequent governments try to do. So on the one hand, the Tama, there's a tension that refers as a term to an imaginary building, but at the same time it also refers to this blurred idea that we have in the 20th century that somehow all the Greeks go together and promise God something.
But when did this appear?
Was there a use of the word before the dictatorship? Can we trace the history of the use of the very word?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
That's when? Can we be specific about that? Is it part of the Assembly's decision?
No.
So when do you think?
Okay. From what I have seen so far, I would say that it has that specific reference to the Church of the Savior as a collective national vow become more prominent at the time where the cathedral is built in Athens, because then in Mitropoli, τον Αθηνών. Because then what happens is that you have different people suggesting that the vow actually was fulfilled because all the money King Otto had raised for the fulfillment for the construction of the Church of the Savior were actually used for the building of the Metropoli. So some people said that, okay, the vow is fulfilled, and others said no, because it is under a different name. It's dedicated to Mary of the Annunciation. So at that time, as I go through the archival material, I see that the term Tama is used all the more frequently. And then you have throughout the 20th century, and especially in the literature produced by Zoe, references. And you remember that Hieronymus Kotsonis was a leading member of Zoe, references to the Tama to Ethnos.
So practically you say, if I say connection with the very erection of the cathedral,
what I said is that the
19th century, I suppose.
Yes, it started in the 1850s, and it was I think the cathedral was 63. Yeah.
I think it was inaugurated in 1868.
Right.
Okay, but from then on, I have been able to trace continuous references to the Church of the Savior as the nation's vow. Right? Before that, if we study the minutes of the documents of the assembly, there's only reference to a memorial and a Church of the Savior.
Just to mention that it's quite late, so try to be concise because we have to pass to the other papers. Okay, thanks.
No.
Yeah, please.
I have a question.
Okay.
For Goran. Oh, is there anyone else?
I don't know. Anybody else wants to pose a question for Dimitris? Paper or okay? Ada, and then we continue. Yeah, please. No, I mean whatever. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is all this project something that's linked with the political party of Morocco, or is it also diffused in other political sectors? The Macedonian, the ethnically marked Macedonian urbanistic.
No, I mean, it is clearly linked only to the ruling party right now. Yeah, because they control the parliament, they control the local government in city of Skopje, in the central municipality. Now they're actually losing that one, so they're trying very hard to keep it. It's when I say there is a lack of procedure at the beginning, this is what they're doing. The Ministry of Culture donates money to the municipality of center to build all these things. It's a donation. Otherwise, it would be impossible because Macedonia has a power and sharing mechanism. So, by the law, the monument, national monument of national importance is supposed to go to the parliament. And in the parliament, it should be voted by a double majority, including a majority of minority representatives in the parliament. So they knew that none of this will pass. Therefore, they completely obliterated this procedure. There is no reference to the law for monuments, and they implemented from top down as they want it on a daily basis. The detailed urbanistic plan of city of Skopje, of the center, has been changed more than 8 times in the last 3-4 years. So for each new monument, you need a new mark. As they are going on with this project, they are coming up with new ideas, so they need to recall and adjust the detailed urbanistic plan again, because you need this mark for the monument there. So they do it on waves of new ideas and dreamscapes of their whatever. I mean, it's clearly just connected to them. And but let us be clear that we have their brother Albanians in the government, in the coalition, who are doing the same on their own territories. Therefore, these two political parties, which are dividing Macedonian political body and ethnic and territorial spheres, leads me to conclude that this is ethnocratic reordering of the public space. And by ethnocracy, I mean that in Macedonia we don't have democracy, but ethno-representatives who are running the country, running the show. Like a mafia's dividing territories, like in Chicago. So they don't step on each other's territory and they can do whatever they want on their own territory.
And there's a second part in my question I didn't have the time to formulate. Is in Ohrid the same procedure? Because there's an incredible plan for Ohrid.
In Ohrid, the mayor was, until these elections, a member of the Social Democratic Union, which is the opposition party. So maybe they will. Now, for the local elections, the Prime Minister said, we are going to build whole Macedonia 2017. It's not only Skopje 2014, it's Macedonia 2017 for the duration of the mayor mandate.
Clarify something. I'll read the text from the 8th resolution of July 31st. From the archives of so the exact translation is, when the state's financial resources allow it, the government will order the construction of a church honoring the Savior and carrying his name in its capital city. That's page 182. And further down the same page, we have reference. It's again the same resolution of the Fourth National Assembly. It makes reference to a memorial that will also be erected in the Church of the Savior. So the 8th resolution of the Fourth National Assembly, July 31st, start here in Nikis Paligenesias, page 182, makes a direct reference both to the Church of the Savior, not described as the Totama to Ethnos then, and also to a memorial. Yeah.
There's no use of the word Tama.
No. Not at that time.
No, since we started with Goran. Well, actually I was in Skopje some months ago and I had the experience to see how, because it was not the first time I went to Skopje, so I had the experience of how the city was actually formed during the last years. So I have actually 2 or 3 questions. The first one is that you mentioned that this is a project that was successfully implemented. I would like you any data, a social survey, the population, how they receive this plan, etc. So they were successfully somehow. I wanted some more information on that. Second question is about identity. In your presentation, somehow you presented two opposite identities, a local one and a national one. And somehow you implied that there is, the two identities are very different. I mean, you spoke about the different layers of historicity at the local level and a very different identity constructed from above and which would like to replace this lack of identity before. So, what is the local identity and what is the national identity? Because from the new identity, it was obvious only the ancient part. But I saw some Byzantine emperors. So I wanted to know what are the ingredients of this new identity, if we can describe it, and what is the difference of this new identity with the local one, apart from the Ottoman and Socialist part, because these are not the two only parts of the local identity. And, well, that's all I think.
Okay, for the first one, it's a simple answer. The thing is that on these local elections, the mayor of city of Skopje was re-elected in the first round, beating the counter-candidate with almost 3-1. So, call me naive, call me whatever, but these people had a chance to vote against this policy. They voted for. Because of many other reasons, perhaps it was not a referendum on Skopje 2014, of course, but we cannot deny the right of these people to cast their vote. And this is the crucial moment I mean, it's so obvious, right? I did a number of interviews. Of course, I live with the problem, and there is resistance to it. But the problem is that it's located in the pockets of intellectual elite or concerned groups of citizens who organize themselves in very inventive ways. They have flash mob singing group called Raspejani Skopjani, singing Skopjans, who go in front of different monuments in different moments of government decisions, and they go and sing a song and then disappear, like standing in front of the parliament and singing "We Are on the Road to Nowhere" by Talking Heads and stuff like that. Then they all put the clip on YouTube. There are a lot of discourse going on Facebook, on Twitter, doing collage, pastiche, reaction to this, and ridiculing and cynicism and irony being in play. But that's about it. On the day of voting, just a couple of weeks ago, Skopje citizens said what they think. The problem is, who are the Skopje citizens? Because Skopje before the earthquake was 180,000 people. Skopje now is over 600,000 people in the course of 40, 50 years. This cannot be natural reproduction. These are the Skopje citizens who are new citizens to the town, and those Skopjans want to see the old Skopje. They have no clue how old Skopje looked like, and because the architects and ideologues behind this project tell them so, and they trust them because they control all the media and public services and printed media and everything, they decide to trust them. Not every voice is in consent. There are conflicting voices, but then the overwhelming majority is for this project. So that's why and when I said successful, I meant they managed to implement it. It's not on plans, on sketches, but it's implemented. They don't have sketches actually. They do it in practice. And then the second question about the identity, I mean, I was referring only to the Ottoman and socialist past because we were speaking about heritage and protection of heritage or disrespect of this heritage. So we clearly have de-Ottomanization in Macedonia since the Serbian entrance, and it continues on and on even today. Then breaking up with the socialist past is a very crucial, important moment for the VMRO Dopamane, because the ruling party, because what they're trying to do is to break away with the socialist narrative. There's a whole historical revisionism going on. Everything that socialist historians were telling us is wrong. It was ideological and political. We are inheritors of Alexander the Great. Tsar Samuel was Macedonian. Justinian was Macedonian. We have Macedonian culture that goes back to Atlantis. So, to Atlantida. So the thing is that this is called by some analysts antiquization of Macedonian history, and it's a nice and neat way of describing, but I think that it does not matter what's inside this bucket. What matters is how they do it and why they're doing it. How they are doing it is by force, without procedures, without public sphere being allowed to participate, because we don't have public sphere, which is a problem, huge problem, because we only have political sphere. It's monopolized, public sphere is monopolized by the political parties, and this allows for this kind of discourse of, as every totalitarian regime, they are trying to make patriots and traitors. If you don't like a monument for the disproportions, because most of them are very ugly and very poor quality, not in terms of material, but in terms of artistic expression, you immediately mark yourself as a traitor. And you do it immediately. I mean, you are aware that if you say, I don't like it, you know what the label will come on your forehead. And in this kind of discourse of polarization with us or against us, like in Nazi Germany, like in every totalitarian regime, it's impossible to have a public debate. So I don't care that much about what they're trying to put in this jug of nationalism that they are sprinkling over Macedonia all the time, but I'm looking also for the consequences, and that's a definitely division of Macedonia. So,
Christos had a question. Just a moment.
Yes.
Would you say that the Ottoman heritage is considered more Albanian?
No. Ottoman heritage is Ottoman heritage. It's Muslim, right? And that's because we are Christians, the biggest Christians. We gave the letters to the old Slavs, because Cyril and Methodius are Macedonian Slavs, and the old Slavic is old Macedonian, and all that. So this narrative, this line, I mean, it's conflicting. If you look at the different lines of narrative that they're trying to put in one line, it's conflicting, because they are laughing at, when you say I'm Slav, they are laughing at you because you are supposed to feel as a ancient Macedonian, from going back to the continuity to the Alexander the Great. But they will not give up this powerful card to play, that they gave the literacy to all the Slavic people and the Christianity to all the Slavs coming from Macedonia. Because it's mentioned in the Bible. Macedonia is mentioned in the Bible. So St. Paul wrote letters to the Macedonians, and there is a village on the border with Greece in Bogdanci, Paljurci, and the president of the republic goes to this empty space. There is only one hall there, and I mean, that's another story. I cannot monopolize the floor. He is now speaking about Paljurci, by a play of association. Paljurci, where does it come from? St. Paul, Pavle, Paljurci. So St. Paul was in Macedonia, and he goes to visit the Pope on the day of St. Cyril and Methodius in Rome, and he brings him bronzes of Paul, like Paul was in Macedonia, we are connected with Vatican and that kind of things through St. Paul. So, and they just play these games. I mean, I can tell you many other stories about this. So it doesn't matter what you're putting in the content, I'm interested in the end result.
Because of the Muslim identity, exactly, and because they reject the Ottoman past. I just wanted to know if they also play with this card.
Albanians Albanians are monopolizing. If you ask Bosniaks in Macedonia or Turks, they're afraid of Albanian instrumentalization of the mosques for their political gatherings. And Bosniaks in Macedonia, Turks in Macedonia, they feel as a second-rate citizens inside the mosques. They cannot sit in the front rows because only the Albanian prominents sit in the front rows, and they speak in the mosques in Albanian, so Bosniaks cannot understand what's going on, and they feel excluded from their own religious community.
And the Turkish.
And Turkish has to be assimilated because Macedonians don't want them, so therefore the grabs.
And also I have to say that the Ottoman mosques are not restored because nobody is interested, but with some funds from Turkey, the Albanians are just building new mosques.
New ones, more and more.
So it's very complicated, has very many dimensions, and it's really very interesting. Christoph, please.
My question related to that, I like the approach to see the outcomes of certain policies and not try to find the reason behind it. You focused only on the outcomes related to the national divisions in Skopje, and I was wondering whether you can see some an outcome, like an effect to become a capitalist metropolis as well. The whole dimension of creating, being Western with using different symbols maybe, but creating a capitalist metropolis, creating development, capitalist development, but with nationalistic and national monuments and different way, using different symbols, but for the same.
They started building this when the world financial crisis hit the world markets, and their explanation was that they will continue because the public works, construction, engaging construction companies, it will revitalize Macedonian economy. Indeed, Macedonian economy is so bad that it cannot go further down. So each year they are speaking about keeping the status quo of 0.5 degrees percent growth and stuff like that. So they can claim that they successfully managed to escape the economic crisis in Europe or in the world because we are not sinking further down, and it's impossible to you're at the bottom, you cannot just dig the hole deeper down. So they sell this story. And also, in the same time, when we are looking at these monuments, they're populating every possible 3 square meter in the center with commercial and residential buildings. So there are a lot of money that is being flowing around. So if that's a capitalist logic, yes, they're selling that as well.
I have a question to Ada. Concerning the Romanian self-representation in these pavilions, and especially in the one in the Exposition Universelle in Paris, because I didn't quite understand the reference to Byzantium and to the Byzantine heritage in this case, because it is obvious that the models are from the medieval Wallachian architecture and Moldovan architecture, Curtea de Argeș and Trei Erași in Iași, and it is still, you do not have Byzance and pre-Byzance of Nicolae Iorga, and I was wondering to what extent really there was on behalf of the Romanian architects, a reference to Byzantium as a really archetype of the national architectural style, given the fact that in general in the 19th century, in the Romanian historiography, Byzantium is still orientalized to a large extent as something that doesn't have...
Popescu writes about this in early 50s, that architecture in Wallachia and Moldova, especially in Wallachia, is the most prominent continuation of Byzantine architecture. Of course, by that time, plenty of churches, mostly churches, which were later dated to later periods, were believed to have been built earlier. up until the first decade of the 20th century, the architecture, which is finally dated at the end of the 14th century, was believed to be 13th century. So it is true that some of those buildings were dated earlier, but in general, since the mid-19th century, there's a connection made between Wallachian architecture and Byzantine architecture.
Well, I think we can continue our conversation with some drinks over there. I'd like to thank you all the participants and everybody who was here today. It was a very interesting thematic approach, and it was very, I think, also comparative. I don't know if you want to say some words or from the organizers. And
yes, you want to. We can thank you all for participating, especially the people who gave such challenging papers. And we'll get back to you very soon about the sequel of this meeting. So you will hear from us. Thank you very much, and let's have a drink.